Welcome to the Sisterhood of Sweat. Today's guest is Erica Ziel. Erica Ziel is a deep core exercise specialist. She is the founder and creator of Core Athletica, the core rehab program, Knocked Up Fitness, prenatal membership, instruction trainer course, and the host of the Core Connections podcast. She believes that anything you want to improve about your health and life, you can. And she has been featured in People, Shape, Mind Body Green, WebMD, Fit Pregnancy, Red Book, and Oxygen, to name a few, and much, much more. Today, we talked about our deep core and how to care for it, our pelvic floor and how it affects our overall health, healing incontinence, aka you don't have to pee your pants, and our back, how having a weak core can lead to having pain in our back and some back problems, as well as knee pain, hip pain, pain in your feet. And so it could all stem from the core. What is Diastasis Recti? Who does it affect? How it can be healed? Healing your whole self from a holistic approach through movement, wellness, intuition, and breathwork, and healing our body after babies, no matter how long it's been, even if it's been 30 years. Today's conversation was really key. You guys, we talked about things that women hardly ever talk about, but they need to know. You're probably going to learn some things you didn't know, and it's going to help a whole lot of you out there. So make sure to stay tuned. And without further ado, let's dive into the episode. I'm excited to welcome Erica Ziel to the Sisterhood of Sweat today. Welcome.
Well, thank you so much, Linda. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, you guys, Erica's pretty cool. I think she's got some rocking abs, and they didn't happen by accident. I was, I like to research my guest, and I was like, holy cow, she's got a six-pack and all that, and 3 kids. Is it 3 kids, or did I get it wrong?
3 kids. Yeah.
Okay. So inquiring minds want to know, number one, how much is it mostly from spending time in the kitchen? Is it mostly from ab exercises? Is it mostly from cardio? Or is it all 3? How did you get those rocking abs?
It's definitely a combination of healthy nutrition, for sure. I think that is a number one. It is not doing a lot of crunches. I'm actually pretty anti doing a lot of crunches, and it's actually strengthening our entire deep core and understanding how to strengthen the fascia of our abdominal wall more so. So we have a flatter belly and everything stays inside and connected and strong.
For everyone you just lost, when you said fascia,
yeah,
explain to them what fascia is and why it's important.
Okay. So I love talking about fascia. So I'm glad that everyone's listening. And if you don't know what it is, it's perfectly okay. So fascia really is this, it's like a superpower we all have. I like to say it that for starters, but fascia really goes all through our body, around our body. It goes over our muscles, through our muscles, around our organs. If you were to actually take a layer of fascia off of the human body, it would look like the outline of a human body. So it really is a big part of what connects everything together in our body. And specifically when we're talking about our abs, I want to throw this in here for everyone listening, because I think you guys will love this and geek out on it, is that we have these layers of fascia in our abdominal wall. So we are really familiar with our rectus abdominis, right? Those 6-pack muscles, right? But I get even more excited understanding that we have these layers of fascia in our abdominal wall, as well as all over our body. But when we learn how to move in a way and breathe in a way that helps us to strengthen that, it helps us to flatten our belly. It gives our organs support. It gives us just that amazing support so that we can be the right kind of strong and balanced forever, right? When we learn these proper techniques. So hopefully that helps a little bit.
So the fascia is pretty important. And how much time are you spending on, what kind of eating regimen do you follow? And how strict are you?
I'm probably an outlier in the fact that I wouldn't say I'm strict. I have had some major health issues over the years. So gluten has been gone out of my life for about 15 years. We should have taken it out when I was a kid. Looking back, realized I had a lot of problems. So I eat absolutely no gluten. I won't cheat or any of that because it makes me feel awful. I don't do dairy, makes me feel awful. So those two are out, which mixes a lot of foods, I do, I'm not a perfect eater, but I do try to eat a good amount of, variety of vegetables, small amount of fruit, good quality proteins are really important. I am someone who thrives off of eating a lot of protein. I've tried not to, and I have to have it. So it's moderation too, right? I love chocolates, but it's keeping things in my diet that are really low sugar, but not fake sugars. It's just eating real food. I do love a little intermittent fasting. So I tend to try to not eat breakfast until like 10 a.m. In a perfect world, try to eat dinner like at 6, but with 3 kids and activities, sometimes it's 8 o'clock before I'm eating dinner. So it is what it is. So it's just about, I try not to overthink food, I think, and you probably resonate with this a little bit, being in the, movement space, the fitness space, like totally having gone overboard with that at times. Like I try to keep my nutrition pretty, what's the word? Not overthinking it too much. So it doesn't become like an obsession. Does that make sense?
Right. Because I think it's when we go to extremes that we get ourselves into trouble.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So I just try to listen to my body, eat intuitively, and,
and with a name like Core Rehab, I have to ask you these questions. And so basically you're eating well, I'm sure, because what we need to be eating, and you're not running through the drive-through eating McDonald's.
No, never. Oh my gosh. I can't even tell you the last time I had something in a drive-through, let alone a McDonald's. I was probably a child.
No, not knocking McDonald's. I'm sure they have some salads and things like that. But for a health professional, you're not getting junk food is basically what I'm getting at.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely not.
And what about like cardio? What type of cardio do you do, and how often do you do it?
So I have learned to love walking because I've had injuries, so much of my life. And when I was younger, that as much as I want to run, I'm actually better off to go do sprint training stuff periodically and just get outside in nature and go walk for an hour-ish a day, some days more, because like just being outside in nature just is like, it like fuels my soul. It decreases my stress. So does a couple things for me. I also have a Peloton, which I love to do short bursts. I'm not someone who has ever loved cardio, Linda. I haven't. I'm like, if I'm at the gym having to do cardio, you're going to find me on for 10 or 15 minutes, I'm going to be on a bike, and then 10 or 15 minutes, I'll be on a treadmill, and then 10 or 15 minutes. I just can't.
I don't don't enjoy it.
It's like I have ADD with it or something. I don't know.
I know a lot of listeners are loving you already because they wear the shirts that basically if you see me running, I'm running, you better run too. I'm running.
I'd rather do a 10-minute HIIT workout to get my heart rate up, or like I said, a 20-minute interval training on the spin bike, right? Something that's quick and there's an end in sight sooner rather than later, and I can move on and go do my Pilates or my ball release fascial work and stuff that fuels my soul.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you. I think we all have the things that we really like to do. And I always think it's about and what you enjoy and you're going to do more of. And for you started kind of into this space. Tell everybody how you got started and why you ended up creating the Core Rehab program.
Okay, so it really starts when I was 5. I mean, that sounds crazy, but I'll tell you. So starting at the age of 5, I had just crazy knee pain on a pretty daily basis. I just remember from that time on, and even into my teen years, so many nights just like going to bed in almost like tears because my knees hurt. It's like that achy pain, right? Inflammatory pain. Now that, we know I'm allergic to gluten, I should not have been eating that as a child. It probably would have helped me a little bit too. But doctor after doctor kept saying, oh, well, it's just growing pains, so she's going to grow out of it. But I stopped growing 13, 14. And by the time I was 17, and I wanted to be a great athlete. I had potential, but every sport I went out for, I was injured halfway through, so much pain in my knees. I couldn't keep doing it. So finally we ended up at the Mayo Clinic, and I, saw a physical therapist up there, and he's like, well, you need to strengthen your legs. And I'm like, seriously? I've seen so many doctors, and you're the first. You told me this like really simple. To me, it was like this most like this big aha moment, but it was like eye-opening that I was like, that's it. That was so simple. No one could have told me that when I was like 10 even, And so I started lifting in the gym. I had luckily had at the high school I was at, had a great strength and conditioning coach that taught me how to do Olympic lifts, correct, with good form. So it was like ingrained in me from day one that form matters. Right.
Right.
And so it was just, that's what inspired me. I was like, I'm going to go to college, study exercise science. Fell in love. Well, actually during my 3.5 years, because kind of went through college fast I rehabilitated myself. So by the time I was 21, I had no more knee pain. And working with clients and personal training then too, I started to really see like the power of healing that we can do through movement and strengthening our body. Like it just blew me away. And I was so moved because I was like, people need to like understand this. And then I started teaching Pilates. And so it was kind of like one thing after the other. When I moved to California, I studied Pilates. It was like a whole other degree because I took every training and level under the sun, on the equipment, not just mat. And love, and I'm actually in my little Pilates studio down here right now. Love it. It's my favorite thing, absolutely to do, and change a lot of people's lives having them do Pilates with me. But basically where I ended up wanting to create my core rehab program was I moved back to Iowa like 6-ish years ago. And then, so I had a huge influx of new clients, and mom after mom I was working with was having these tearful moments of like, I'm peeing my pants, my back hurts all the time, like all these just ailments that she was dealing with. And she's got like a little kid too, like little ones. Like I'm not talking about 50-year-old moms here, but I work with those too. But this was like, at this moment in time, I had several like that were in their mid to late 20s and early 30s. And I was like, whoa, I didn't have any of this with my clients that I worked with. So I was like, what's happening? And I started really recognizing that we were teaching core training ineffectively. And it was actually leading to more harm for specifically moms, but it can happen for women in general, even if you're not a mom. And I know before we got on, you were talking about some of your injuries, right? We tend to push our bodies, and we've been taught certain ways to train our bodies from a very young age, some of it amazing, some of it not so amazing. And in time, it can lead to injury and dysfunction. So that was when I was like, I have so much to teach women. I've got to teach this and put this into a format that women can do at their own pace and really learn about her body. Because I've recognized as women, we don't know a lot about our body from an anatomy perspective. Like I teach a masterclass now that teaches like female anatomy, and I show a very tasteful image of our pelvic floor. And oh my gosh, like the amount of women that are like, wait, I heard you have this masterclass about teaching pelvic floor, about pelvic floor and all that. Like, can I get in on that? And I was like, it's just, I guess for me, right, I took anatomy way back in college. We didn't even learn about the pelvic floor actually back in college. But it's just one of those things where I've recognized that women need to understand about her body, and not just the what to do's, but really understand her body and the anatomy and how it all works together. So that's like kind of, a long-winded my story from 5 to where I am today.
I love it. That, I wouldn't have it any other way. If you weren't passionate about it, I wouldn't have you on the Sisterhood of Sweat. I think it's really important for all kinds of reasons that we get in touch with our pelvis. I mean, all the time, I realize that people don't even realize they have a pelvis, for one thing. Like they're not in touch with it. They don't understand. Like if I'm like, no, don't tuck your pelvis under. You're pulling your spine in 2 reverse directions. You got to do a little booty pop. You got to arch your back a little bit. None of this like tuck,
the
tucking it
tucking.
under. None of this tucking. I mean, I can't tell you how many people came to me and they've been taught to tuck. And I was like, that's why your back's hurting. Yes. And your knees, because, it's this whole body mechanics. And we're taught to be polite as a society, and we don't want to stick our butts out. And I'm like, blue moon, pretend you're mooning everybody in the back row. Because I want him to understand. So we do a lot of cat-cow and a lot of things to kind of get him understanding how that should be moving. But like, and don't even get me started on when I was teaching Zumba, your hips, don't lie. They do lie. Nobody knows they're not in touch with their hips because, they have it, it's just this polite society. I'm just serious about this. And once they kind of get loose and they start realizing, like, it's a lot of core work actually when you're doing Zumba, and they understand how to kind of work that core region and that pelvic floor. And after tearing basically out half my muscles from the pelvis, I will say I recognized how important my pelvis was. And it's pretty damn important. And I started, I tried so many things, right? Trust me, I was not going to stay down. But what really I finally started realizing is I needed to do Pilates, and I added it to all of my yoga, Yeah. And that's what really started healing my injury on the groin. Even though it hurt a lot at first, it made me stronger. And now I'm like, okay, I'm up, I'm running, I'm doing my workouts, I'm starting to feel like myself again. And the Pilates was very, very healing. And I think, wasn't that why Joseph Pilates started, he started all the Pilates
to heal his body.
Heal his body. So it is very healing. And it shouldn't be overestimated. If you're a diehard sports fan and a fitness person, and you think, I gotta just, I got to do 12 miles today, and I've got to do the Peloton for, 2 classes, and the things that you have in your brain. We undervalue things like Pilates and yoga until you end up with an injury.
Oh, I say that all the time. I feel like I'm always talking to women and they're like, but it's not hard enough for me. And I'm like, well, if you don't feel like, with what I teach, for example, whether it's my core rehab program or just one of my Pilates workouts, right? Like, if you don't feel what I'm cueing you to feel, then you're not doing it right. Because so many times we've been ingrained to like that go hard or go home. And it's like, if our muscles are not just clenched tight, right? And you're talking about the pelvis tucked underneath, like I cannot tell you, that is like one of the first things to talk about is getting your pelvis to untuck and to stop gripping those glutes because it shuts off your pelvic floor. It leads to, you said back pain, it leads to pelvic floor dysfunction. It leads to poor posture, like on and on, right? So it's so important that we recognize that, yeah, like I'm all for doing a hard kick butt workout if that feels good for you. But also on the flip side of it, we have to recognize that there's so much of our body and even our muscular system and then our fascial system that we're not really tapping into when we just are doing that go hard all the time. And when you actually back off a little bit, learn how to start to strengthen the deeper layers of your body through Pilates, through doing understanding breath work. It's really good. We always say in Pilates, like we're preventing Alzheimer's because it's so good for your brain. Like it will teach you how uncoordinated you are. Like it's, you know, but it's amazing how quickly you can improve. You just have to be patient with yourself and, you know, learn new ways. And I think at the end of the day, like that's a piece of advice for all of us, is just always remember to be open-minded and trying new things. Like if you're someone who likes a hard kick butt workout, well, challenge yourself on the flip side and be like, okay, well, how can I do something that is working my body in a completely different way? And actually, I see time and time again, women getting such better results when they do that, even if it means sometimes, because like I work with a lot of women with injuries and pelvic floor dysfunction, right? And I have to convince her to be like, we need to stop running for a period of time if we're peeing our pants. If we've got back pain, knee pain, all that, right? Because if we keep pushing, then we eventually really could have a severe injury or tear a muscle.
Because
like
you're not listening to your body.
Exactly. But here's what I hear all the time and time again, when women listen to me and she's like, okay, I'm going to trust you because I've had enough women work with me to date, right? That we know this is a proven process and method that I teach. But when she slows down and she stops the high intensity for a period of time, really learns about her body, learns how to connect and strengthen her deep core in a way that she's never learned how to do before.
Right.
Then as she gets stronger that way and she gradually works her way back into running her high intensity stuff, guess what? She's stronger. Yeah. It's more effective for her and her dysfunction is gone, right? It doesn't happen overnight because we didn't get to dysfunction overnight too. And that's where we live in this society of like, we want results yesterday. And I hear you ladies, trust me, I'm there with you, but we have to recognize the body takes time to heal. And there's also a lot of brain training. You mentioned Pilates, right? It's like so good for the brain. And this deeper movement, it's slower, it's smaller range of motion, it's more breath focused. It's really mindful. And it's just this more amazing way to help our body to just be more aware with our body, really is the best way to say that.
And sometimes I think people don't want to be aware of it.
Well, maybe.
I mean, it's part of it. It's part of it. Like, you know, the type A's that don't want to relax during the end of yoga. It's like, because now they have to stop and face themselves and be in their body. And but you know what? That's what we all need. So what you resist is what you usually need to embrace.
Yeah. And when you do, and I talk about this because I love explaining to women, like, look, like when you start moving in a more gentle way, and especially when we start doing more with the pelvic floor and the pelvis, it's really common that all of a sudden she just wants to cry. And she's like, I have no idea why I feel like I need to cry right now. We hold so much stuff in our pelvis, right? Think about it. As women, we have all of our sexual organs around there, right? So we hold so much in there. And one thing that I always like to remind everyone about this is like, we really do have so much control over that. So if something's coming up for you, you're feeling like you need to cry, instead of like shoving it deep inside, like we all like to do, right? And forging our way ahead, like allowing yourself to actually feel what you're feeling, whether you like it or not, and be like, okay, I'm ready to let go of that. And that's what I think some of what you're hitting on is like, because so many times we get that major adrenaline kick when we're going hard and we're running hard and all that, that like that feels way better for us than to slow down and face whatever's going on within our body. But where the real work really happens is when we learn to process that stuff and move on with our life.
I love it. Yeah, that's it. That's so true, because I found my running was like a coping mechanism. And if I didn't want to feel a feeling or deal with something, then I just went out and ran and always felt better afterwards, right? So when that is gone and you're not allowed to run because you had to have your hamstring reattached, you have to realize a few things. And it was quite like a eye-opener and a learning experience in so many different ways. I had to find new ways to cope and appreciate my body and say, how are we going to move forward differently? So if anybody out there is listening and they can relate to this, this is a good podcast for you today to just kind of sink your teeth into. My next question for you though, Erica, because I hear this common complaint from all the women in my studio and on the podcast, it you know, how can they heal this incontinence? They feel like they're going to pee their pants. And 5 minutes into class, if they didn't go, they're running for the bathroom because we started bouncing or doing something. And they're just like, I need to wear Depends and I'm only 30 or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's a real thing. So I'm glad we're going to talk about this today. So first off, I always like to say, if you are experiencing any sort of incontinence or the peeing of your pants, whether it's during a workout class or running, or just even sneezing or coughing or laughing periodically, right? That's like your body's first sign that it's trying to get your attention, that we need to bring more awareness to our pelvic floor, to our deep core, and actually learn how to really start to strengthen our pelvic floor in the safe and correct way so that we don't eventually have pelvic organ prolapse, right? Which is where our organs can fall out of our vagina. Yes, it happens. And it's a real thing. And I don't say it to scare women. I say it because I work with women that have had that happen.
Oh my goodness.
And a lot of times, like there's different degrees of it, right? But a lot of times a woman will be told, okay, well, you have to have a hysterectomy. Well, a hysterectomy isn't a solve all. It's like just the easy way to go have surgery, thinks it fixed the problem. It doesn't actually fix your pelvic floor. It just got rid of an organ out of your body. And so there's so much more to unpack with that. But if we start really starting to understand our pelvic floor, one of the first things, we already hit on one of them, and that is women tucking their butt. And I cannot tell you enough, tucking the pelvis, that lady shuts off your pelvic floor. It shuts it off. You are not optimally activating your pelvic floor if you are tucking your butt. So anyone listening, stop tucking your booty right now. Now, don't overcompensate either, right? I know, Lydia, you were saying like arch your back a little bit. Absolutely. As women, we should all have a little natural curve in our lumbar spine. Some of us are going to have more than others. And there may be some of you listening that actually have too much of an arch in our lower back. And we just have to connect more internally. But more women tend to tuck. And I find that it happens as women age, and we're taught a lot in fitness classes, like, you know, tuck your booty. And I'm like, stop tucking your booty. And so that's a big thing. The other one is, you know, when we are thinking about doing our abdominal work, right? And a lot of times we're taught to like really suck our abs in. And maybe there's a time and a place for that, but on a regular basis, we need to avoid doing that, because when we are really sucking in super hard, it can put pressure down on our pelvic floor. So in a fitness class, for example, if she's really bracing and drawing her belly in and then jumping up and down and doing different things, she's not actively activating her pelvic floor at all. So she has zero support. So, right, we have to learn how to actually start to activate our pelvic floor. And I do find with a lot of women who, you know, are big into fitness, they actually don't have too weak of a pelvic floor. Now, some do, but a majority of them have too tight of a pelvic floor.
That's probably what I had.
Probably. And especially if you're really tight in like your inner thighs. And here's the thing that I want everyone to understand, because I always say sometimes like the pelvic floor found me. I didn't go specifically searching for the pelvic floor, but I discovered along the way as I was just evolving and learning and, you know, improving my methods and techniques that, okay, the pelvic floor is amazing. And it is it's a standalone muscles of the pelvic floor, the base of our pelvis, right? But for optimal pelvic function, we have to address what's going on with our hips, our inner thighs in particular. How is the rest of our deep core, right? How are we breathing? How are we holding our body? What's our rib cage doing, right? Remember the fascia layers I was talking about at the beginning of our abdominal wall, right? Are we activating that, or are we just always doing tons and tons of crunches that are causing us to like round forward all the time? And so we just want to make sure, like, even if you're doing crunches in a workout class, that we're not continuing that posture and those mechanics as we're holding our body throughout the rest of our day. Because I see a lot of women that we tend to like pull our sternum down and inward like that. Like if you're just listening, right? It's just like, okay, if you're trying to sit up tall, but then just drop your boobs really for a second and slouch, like you can't activate your pelvic floor in a seated or standing position, or actually any position, when we're into that crunch motion all day long. Right. And so I think we get into that and not having amazing posture, and all of that can lead to peeing your pants, right? I know a girlfriend of mine who used to do a lot of, she was a hair and makeup artist and behind the scenes for a big, fitness company. And when they would film their workouts, their women would always be like, okay, we have to wear, black pants, because every single one of them would be peeing their pants. And afterwards they would mop up the pee on the floor. I'm just like, oh my gosh.
I saw like a CrossFit video on YouTube where all the women were doing box jumps and just peeing on the floor.
Yeah. And that to me
but it still was kind of like, that's probably what they feel like doing. If they have this problem.
Yeah.
But I know it's a meme, but it looks so real, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, I just think so many women are told by other women in their life that it's just normal, right? We've made it a normal thing to pee our pants and pee our pants during workouts. And to me, it's like, oh no, we have a lot of healing opportunity, because I end up working with women that are in their 50s and 60s that have had to have hysterectomies. And when they actually start to learn and understand, like, there was information out there that I could have actually potentially either prevented a hysterectomy or started to learn how to reverse my incontinence. It's like tears all the time, right? She's just so disheartened that she goes to a doctor and it's like surgery, surgery, surgery. And I will tell you, women that do my core rehab program, 100% of them get rid of their incontinence. And I say that, so like, I know that's a huge thing to say, but it's true. And so if we have incontinence, it's like, that needs to be that big, like, red light that's going off. It's like, okay, it's time to change something. It's not time to stop working out at all. Like, that's never what I want women to do. What I want to do is empower every single woman that you should be able to work out, do what you want to do, but without pain and without dysfunction. And does that mean sometimes that we have to take a couple steps back to learn about our body, learn how to strengthen our deep core in a way that's really going to build us up, so that when we are 50, 60, 70, 80, we're not having to wear Depends. Because it's absolutely possible, but as a society, and we don't talk about it otherwise. I mean, I talk about it all the time, but
you know what? People don't, because they're embarrassed and they feel shame around it. Talking about peeing their pants, right? And it really is just a reality, and it happens to so many of us. Mm-hmm. I think, if you have 3 kids, that's 3 kids that were in there, maybe jumping on your bladder.
Yeah. And even if you didn't have, you
can still be weak, huh?
Yeah, you can still. So even if you haven't had any babies, women can still have pelvic floor dysfunction, because again, if you're really tight in your pelvic floor, right, you're not able to properly activate. And for women who've had C-sections, I get a lot of women who are like, well, I had a C-section, so I don't need to learn how to strengthen my pelvic floor. And I'm like, oh, no, you do. You absolutely do. So it really applies to all women, not just moms.
So what is the pelvic floor for everyone?
Okay. So our pelvic floor, right? We think of it as, many times it's taught as like, oh, do your Kegels, right? So many times when women are doing a Kegel, though, I don't love them. And I'll tell you why. Because most women think of their pelvic floor as about like a quarter size, right? It's like the vaginal opening, right? That's what I find a lot of women think their pelvic floor is. And they're taught typically to like practice, strengthening and do your Kegels by stopping the flow of urine, which I like, please stop doing that, ladies. Because if we are stopping our flow of urine midstream, and especially if we do it on a semi-regular basis, it can lead to bacterial backup in our bladder, which can lead to UTIs. And I don't know, Linda, have you ever had UTIs?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, they are horrible. Absolutely horrible, right? So let's not do anything to encourage bacteria to build up in our pelvic or in our bladder. And that's only addressing the front of our pelvic floor. Okay. So I like to use a diamond shape. So I take my fingers up and I like think of our pelvic floor as a diamond. So ladies, if you take your pointer fingers together, take your thumb together, think about how big that is. It's a diamond. So if we think of that at the base of our pelvis, with the front of the pelvic floor starting at our pubic bone, running all the way back to our tailbone, and then from sits bones to sits bones. So if you're sitting up right now, and you kind of wiggle around your pelvis, start to kind of find those 4 bony points, that's how big essentially your pelvic floor is, right? Now there's different musculature through there. There's the layers of fascia, which I talked about. And above our pelvic floor, this is why fascia matters so much, and not just our muscular system, is that we have layers upon layers, like of thickness of fascia that's above our pelvic floor to help hold and support our organs. So this is also why we cannot just do a standalone Kegel to strengthen our pelvic floor. And especially if you are already too tight in your pelvic floor, ladies, stop doing them. So, and I know you are all like thinking like, but wait, that's what I've been taught to do my whole life, right? So the key part in this is we've got to learn how to release and relax through our pelvis and our pelvic floor, right? And if we're really tight and if we're gripping our glutes, that's a really good place to start, to untuck the pelvis, stop clenching your glutes all day long, because it is to make it impossible for you to properly strengthen your pelvic floor. Now, this stuff takes time, ladies. Like, this takes time, weeks, possibly months, right? But you have to start somewhere. Again, we didn't get here overnight, so can't expect it to get better in 24 hours, right? And also understanding that for optimal pelvic floor function, ladies, we have to improve our posture. We have to think about lengthening up through our body, right? So many times, even if we think of like a Kegel and just the pelvic floor, like drawing together and up, right? Just of our pelvic floor, sure, you can do that. That's fine. But for optimal pelvic floor function, we have to continue it all the way up through our torso to the top of our head. So if you get nothing else from today's conversation, ladies, just start paying more attention to how you are holding your body throughout your day. If we have horrible posture, your pelvic floor is not going to activate. Right? So holding your body with good posture and starting to bring awareness to your pelvic floor, right? And so if you are noticing that you're peeing your pants periodically, or you have a sneeze coming on, like, try to activate your pelvic floor through your deep core altogether before you sneeze. And it may not work the first time, right? But eventually, as you practice it more and more, you're going to start to feel improvement in your pelvic floor, and the incontinence can absolutely go away.
Perfect. What about, people don't realize when they're having all these back issues, as well as knee issues, hip issues, but like back, I want to kind of refer to that.
Yeah, that's
because their core is weak.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm so glad you said that. You know what I love about, I can say this, like, love about back pain. Back pain, we can get rid of usually so quickly, just by starting to bring some more awareness to posture, to what you're doing with your core, right? If you're really sucking your belly in all day long, you're putting so much pressure into your pelvis and into your back, that many times we start to bring awareness to finding that more neutral to slight arch in our low back, with our pelvis, and we stop bracing and gripping through our muscles, and it improves typically so quickly. Like, it's one of the first things I teach is I dive in and teach everyone, like, okay, we're going to really break this down from our feet all the way up the chain about our posture, and, try to avoid locking your knees, ladies, because when you lock your knees, guess what? You go right into your low back. And I love how you said too, like, you're so aware that, like, the pelvic floor plays such a role in back pain, in hip pain, in knee pain. It does. And it's amazing. Time and time again, we have women who are like, well, I don't have any of this stuff, but I have knee pain. I'm like, you still got to learn all this stuff to heal your knees, because a lot of knee pain and dysfunction comes from the pelvis because of alignment and imbalances in our pelvis. And that the thing to understand about our pelvis, ladies, really too, is it's bony pieces, right? Bones that are held together with muscles and fascia. And the cool thing about that is we can improve it. It can all be improved and changed. We just have to kind of get out of our old patterns that we've been doing of movement and learn a new way of moving our body that is just can be so much more rewarding. And then when we are doing, again, the high intensity stuff, eventually, like, it's so much better and you're so much stronger.
So, like, what type of exercises do you like to have people do you know, when you're trying to get them like some basics to get their pelvic floor activated and kind of understand how it moves and how to strengthen it.
So a couple that I love is I love pelvic tilts. It's just you're laying on your back, right? Feet are flat on the floor. Like you're going to come up for a crunch, but you're not going to do a crunch. And we're going to use our breath to stimulate pelvic floor, deep core, and not our glutes and hamstrings. So just that element gives women a lot of feedback to like, oh, I'm really using my glutes when I actually thought I was activating my pelvic floor. So that's a huge key thing for a lot of women. The next one in there is doing hip rolls, which you start in a pelvic tilt and then you slowly, like we all know bridges, right? Where your booty's up in the sky, right? So it's essentially that, but instead of just lifting up and down, you're articulating your spine and you're using your deep core pelvic floor to activate. And then at some point we activate our glutes and hamstrings. So it gives our body this feedback of like, oh, are we clenching our glutes the entire time? Or do we actually know how to let go of them at the bottom? And we allow our pelvis to arch, right? We allow our pelvis to move into a tucked position to then roll, but you're doing it all with like using breath to stimulate it. And so it just gives your body so much feedback. You'll feel if you're really restricted on a right side versus a left side in your pelvis, your hips, or your low back, or even up in your shoulder. Like it's amazing how much when our pelvis is off, that can actually be causing shoulder pain. Like you might be really tight on the right side of your pelvis, hip, pelvic floor, and you've got left shoulder and neck pain. But guess what? A lot of people you go to and they're just going to be like, oh, well, you have neck shoulder pain. Let's look at your neck and shoulder. But if you were to come in, I was to work one-on-one with you, right? I'm always going to look at your pelvis, even if you came to me for neck pain. I'm like, okay, well, we'll work on your neck, but we have to start at your pelvis. And many times as we do that, everything else starts to really realign itself. It's pretty amazing and magical. Now, Linda, you have to let me know. I feel like I kind of went off and I was like, did I answer your full question?
You did, totally. So how does the pelvic floor health affect our overall health? Is that kind of what you were saying then?
Yeah, it does in the fact that it matters because it's a part of how everything is all interconnected, right? So if we want to have optimal core function, we have to understand our pelvis, our pelvic floor, right? And we're talking so much today about the pelvis itself. Well, what is the base of the pelvis? It is the pelvic floor. So how can we expect to keep our pelvis in alignment, right? When it's all these bony pieces attached by basically tissue that we can manipulate. It can be too tight, it can be too weak, and our body will always learn how to cheat and compensate. So we have to just learn how it all is working together. And so for optimal core function, we have to understand our pelvic floor, how it functions on its own, yes, but more importantly, how it all functions together as a whole.
Perfect. So now we've talked about not peeing our pants, you know, the whole, like our back pain, our injuries. We've kind of been going down a list. But I know some women get this ab separation a lot during pregnancy. I mean, that's probably the majority, I would think. But the rectus diastasis, like, how do they get this?
So diastasis recti is, again, it's the separation of the rectus abdominals, right? We have that linea alba that goes down the midline, which is fascia tissue, right? So it's common with pregnancy, right? Because belly stretches and then there has to be give at some point if we're not strengthened in the right way, right? So many times women can get that big, massive stretching of in between the rectus abdominals. And so then we're left with what's called diastasis recti postpartum and beyond. And so basically that's classified with having, you know, space that's bigger than one finger width when you test. And I do have a test video. So if you want me to share that, I can send that over to you, Linda.
Okay, perfect.
So what matters is, yes, the width matters. That's where most women get really concerned, is when they test, like, how wide apart are my rectus abdominals? Well, ladies, know that one finger width space is normal, right? Because if you look at someone with a six pack, they have that little spacing anyway, right? That's normal. So anything more than one is wider, right? But what I get more focused on and educate my ladies is that it's the depth that matters, right? Because if you're testing and you're able to just like either put a whole fist down into your abdominal wall, or even your fingers straight down, even if you only have one finger width space, that tells me that that fascial tissue, those fascial sheaths in your abdominal wall are very weak. And and I get excited in the sense that like, okay, that means there's so much room, healing, improvement that can be done. So we have to teach our body how to become strong again, fascially through our core. So if you've got diastasis recti, please stop doing crunches. Please stop doing the ones where you wrap a towel around you. That I swear that does nothing, right? It's just like, that doesn't work. So we have to go about it in a way that it's not just about addressing the abdominal wall. Okay. So I get a lot of women that are like, Eric, I don't care about my pelvic floor. I just want to heal my abs. And I'm like, okay, well, to optimally really work to heal diastasis recti, you need to care about your pelvic floor, because again, it is the base of your deep core. So I can't teach you how to optimally strengthen those layers of fascia in your abdominal wall without you understanding how to also include your pelvic floor in that exercise, right? So it's not just about bringing the abdominals together. It's also about strengthening them together and up. And it's from an internal outward. And, women can have, go through all the strengthening and end up with, what's called a functional diastasis. So maybe the space never comes all the way together to one. And for me, that's okay. Because what I care more about is that she's going to have a flat belly, right? Wouldn't we rather have a flatter belly that holds our organs in, then really just focusing on drawing it together. And then we're still maybe left with a poochy belly because we haven't actually learned that knitting together to support our organs. So, and if we don't have support of our organs, ladies, we end up with a lot more stagnation in our digestive system, constipation, and all of that. And so it's a twofold of that. Digestion matters when it comes to core function. 100%.
Oh, this is so good. And I've been talking a lot about digestion in the last few episodes I've recorded before you. So this is perfect. It's so in alignment. Ladies, you're getting a real treat today to learn some more things, because I feel like there's so many things that women face that aren't talked about at all. And so I just really am enjoying this conversation today. How like we have babies, and a lot of women have all these injuries. They have you said diastasis recti. Yeah. I always learned it the opposite way.
That's
so I said
totally okay.
So, we're having the back pains, or having the C-section, the junk is dropping out because they didn't understand the importance of the pelvic floor. Can we heal our bodies after babies, no matter how long it's been since we had them?
Absolutely. Yes. Time and time again, I see this. Even if you have a 30-year-old child, right? I believe that it's never too late to really learn how to, properly strengthen your core, improving your posture so we can move out of dysfunction and pain, so you can really enjoy life, right? Because at the end of the day, right, like if you've got pain and dysfunction, what's it holding you back from doing? And so for me, I get excited to help women get back to whether it's their workouts they haven't been able to do, or getting up and down from the ground with their kids. I mean, it's crazy. I work with moms that are in their 30s and they're like, oh my gosh, Erica, it hurts me to get down on the ground because of my knees and my back with my little toddler, And I'm like, no, like we have to talk about this, right? So we can teach women so that they can strengthen their body safely and effectively to really enjoy life and do the things that you all love to do without pain, without dysfunction, without slowing down too much.
And I don't know, this just kind of reminds me of, I was listening to this podcast with Lewis Howes, where the guy was talking about his approach to longevity, that he wants to live 200 years. So that's what he's planned, and that's how he lives, and that's how he takes care of his body. Like, it is very important, like the best fuel, the best exercises, the rest, the best supplements, or he like totally thinks about his body, like of its importance. And a lot of times we're treating our body like a garbage can, you know, like what we're putting in it, how we're treating it in other ways. We're abusing it. Maybe we're overusing it, underusing it. Like, so all of these things matter. And I like how you say healing the whole self and taking a holistic approach to your healing through movement, wellness, intuition, and breath work. Can you give us a little brief synopsis on your philosophy around that?
Yeah. So, I started out in fitness and I love it. I love it. I believe movement really can be meditation for our souls, right? But think about movement for a minute, right? How much breathing is involved in it, right? And I've just learned over the years that in order to really activate our pelvic floor, strengthen it correctly, breath plays a massive, massive role. So that's a huge part of breath, right? The intuition plays a huge role because for me, that is our body awareness, right? Us becoming more connected with ourself and our intuition and letting ourself guide us versus the outer world trying to dictate us, or our monkey mind chatter, right? Trying to like just constantly talk us out of things or whatever it is, right? And then just wellness as a whole, because it's all intertwined. And under wellness, we could talk about, nutrition and our supplementation and all of that kind of stuff, right? It really is all interconnected together. So I just love taking a very holistic approach to all of it.
Well, I've loved this so much today. And I feel like a lot of ladies out there have learned something today that they did not know that could be useful to them. And they're probably wondering right now how they could do your core rehab program that you've created. How can they get a hold of that, and how easy is it for them to access and use?
Okay, so I first will let everyone know I have a free pelvic floor guide, which is a great place to start. It's a one page where I break it down for you how you're breathing and the exact cues that we've talked a lot about today, but to really break it down for you. So that's on my website at ericaziel.com/pelvic floor. And core rehab, it's a 6-phase program where each phase like builds upon the next. And it's really a move at your own pace, right? You get a schedule. So there's no guessing in it, right? You gotta you start and you go and you follow it exactly. And I offer coaching calls with that. And I do that because so many times women feel like they're alone or they're the only one dealing with this. Or maybe you come across a workout or a movement and you're like, I don't know if I'm doing this right. Or maybe this one kind of bothers your hip. And it's like, okay, well, I'm here to support you because all of our bodies are unique and different. So I get to help offer that extra guidance of like, okay, well, instead of doing that right now today, let's do more of this instead. So I'm really here to help empower women to take back their health, right? And mobility is so important for longevity, right? If we look ahead in the future and you see women as they get older, I will tell you there is a huge, massive correlation in our quality of life as we age and our mobility. And women don't typically think about that in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, but I see a lot of women's bodies starting to fall apart in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and beyond. So the sooner you can start to learn better techniques in a sense and learn more about your body and really empower yourself, like sky's the limit. And this knowledge, like no one can ever take knowledge away from you, which is why I love education. I love teaching. So.
Right. And so your core rehab is like videos, right?
Yep. It's all videos. It's pre-recorded videos, and a schedule and then live coaching calls. So
that's perfect. So anybody out there has access to help themselves if they don't understand what we're talking about today. They grab a hold of Erica's plan and immerse yourself. It sounds like it's going to be, fairly user-friendly. So I think that's key, right? And like mobility, when you're talking about mobility, I add that in all of my yoga and Pilates. Also, we do mobility work because It's about that range of motion and being able to be mobile and move through the movements. And these are the things that ladies start to complain about. They say, I can't get up off the floor. I can't get up and down well. And they don't understand why. So mobility is a huge part of that, which could be a whole nother conversation.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, this has been so good today, and I really appreciate your knowledge and how you kind of set yourself apart in the fitness industry with, really focusing on this very much needed topic about our pelvic floor. And so like that right there, I think is going to be a ticket for many people out there, especially for the incontinence, but like also just in general, your knee, back, and hip pain, and oh gosh, so many things. And of course, we don't want our organs falling out, so
No,
we're all
we
gonna
do
be
not.
like, whoa, let me get in touch with that pelvis. So thank you so much today. And what's one final tip you could leave with everybody?
Be kinder to yourself. Give yourself grace.
Perfect. I like that. That could almost be the title of our podcast. Yeah. That was so good today. And I want to thank you again for the freebie for the audience, and thank everyone for listening to this episode of the Sisterhood of Sweat. Bye, everybody.